everyone, welcome back. It's Moe aka Swedish Whiskey Girl, and today we're here with the two whiskies from Nc'Nean. And of course, one is the one that I've already reviewed, the Ainnir, and this here from the Whiskey Mead subscription. I'm not even going to try and say what my code is if anyone is looking for a referral code, but I'll put it up because I haven't been able to say it right so far. Yeah, this is the batch number 1. And of course, moving forwards, they are doing these kind of flagship core release in different batches. And this sits at 46% ABV. But I think they're fairly similar in like casks. I know that the batch 1 is also made using American oak casks and red wine casks, which you also have on the Ainnir. But yeah, Nc'Nean is of course a very new distillery, and they've just released their whiskies, and it's quite exciting, and they're very much focused on sustainability, and yeah, it's a very exciting one for me to follow. So I'm gonna be really curious to try these two. I will try the Ainnir as it is at 60.3, but then we'll add some water as well and see what it's like. But let's start with the batch 1 because that's the one I've never tried. Let's have a look on the nose. This has a lot of that kind of barley note to it, like a barley field, with a bit of maybe honey sweetness. A kind of young, fresh note about it. It does remind me of being maybe a little bit like a bit of a maltier Highland single malt, around maybe around 10 years old. It's kind of the same maltiness, but it's quite fresh and quite like sweet and malty, but yeah. Has a bit of a grassiness. And there's a fruitiness underneath as well. I'm just trying to figure out what kind of fruitiness it is. It's quite a green one, I would say, probably like apples and pears. Before we try this one, I just want to have a little nose of the Ainnir. This one's so much more pine. I know that what I said on this one the first time around was that it was pine and blackberry tart, and the pine is still the thing that I get first of all, and I think it was the last time as well. They're fairly, like, they both have this kind of fresh nature, almost grassiness about them, but the batch 1 is more kind of grassy and barley field, and the Ainnir is more pine forest. Yeah, I would still say blackberry tart because it has this kind of, I guess, like doughiness, but that kind of berry fruitiness. But let's have a taste of the batch 1, Sláinte Skål. Interesting, it has the malty flavours, but without being dry, which is kind of what I was anticipating, but not in that, yeah, it's more juicy and more fresh than I thought it was going to be. And I think, because I think this kind of barley field note is a quite nice one. It's surprisingly not very young. It doesn't have those kind of sharp edges or the like overly vegetal note or a lot of metallic notes, but it's quite a sweet barley field with some fruitiness that is almost like a mixture between maybe like a citrus element like lemons and then apples as well, because it's like a yellow-green fruitiness that's very juicy, which is, yeah, quite juicy and quite fresh and alive, which is very pleasant. And I think it sits quite well at 46. It's slightly burning, especially now on the finish. I just feel it. But it's also my first dram of the day. And I mean, if I'd started with the Ainnir, which is 60.3, it might have been a different thing. But let's have a little sip on the Ainnir as well and see if we can compare them. It's that pine that just comes out straight away. This is straight away more robust. I mean, I think you can still see the character coming through, but the Ainnir is a bit more woody and pine and nature, and that blackberry tart that comes in is like blends in well with the oakiness, and the oakiness feels quite drying on the Ainnir, but I think with such a robust flavour it suits it quite nicely. It doesn't feel, because personally my preference is usually not towards whiskies that are drying, but I think the drying sensation you get with the woodiness on the Ainnir is quite suiting to the character. It's this kind of, yeah, it has this kind of fairy tale-esque feel about it, quite dark, like John Bower fairy tale, if anyone's familiar with those. But it's quite dark forest, it's quite like there's trolls and like that. That's kind of how I see this whiskey. And yeah, it is more robust and not as juicy, but it's going to be very interesting to add a little bit of water, but I'm going to have another sip first. Yeah, because this also has that kind of yellow-greenish fruitiness. Now on the second sip, it's slightly, almost too much of the hot alcohol, the spice and the drying wood. Even though the flavour is very nice, I just think the sensation's almost a bit too much, but it is fairly early in the morning when I'm recording this, so let's add a little bit of water. Start with that, see what happens. Don't want to numb my palate too much when we have another sip of the batch one either. Yeah, barley field on the batch one. And troll forest on the Ainnir. Let's have a sip on the batch one again. I'm enjoying them both, but in quite a different way, and I wasn't anticipating that. Yeah, it feels like quite an autumny dram, the batch one, because you know when it comes around Halloween times like it is now, people start getting out the kind of, it's like hay that comes out, and there's barley and this kind of decorations, and then the dry leaves, and it feels a bit like that. It's late harvest, perhaps, is what it makes me think of. But I have another sip of the Ainnir as well. It's definitely more robust on the nose as well. It's just a little bit more dense, I would say. Might need some more water on this one. It's kind of the same, but I think sometimes when you add a little bit of water to something, it has this edge, and if you draw it halfway, it's just like a bit meh. And then if you just push it slightly over, then you get the release of the flavours, especially with something that sits so high, and maybe because it's a bit younger as well. yeah, much more interesting now. It's like it's exploded, like this little thing that's exploded. But I think the Ainnir, to me, just tastes a lot like a forest. It almost makes you think of Scandinavia, because it has this. So one of the main differences between the UK and Scandinavia, or like at least Sweden where I'm from, which is what I know best, is that the climate here is so much more humid. So if you're walking through a forest in Sweden, it's a lot drier. So which means that you'll experience the aromas around you in a very different way, because that's why when I describe things as a jungle vegetal notes, it's very different because it's a hot climate and it's a lot humid usually. But yeah, it makes me think of like Scandinavia because it's quite a dry forest, and yeah, it's quite robust, and I think it's lovely. And I also get the aromas that I got from it last time with the blackberry tart influence as well. But I'm almost tempted to say that I preferred the batch one today, because I'm just feeling something a little bit like a sweet late harvest barley field. And yeah, I can feel it in my body as well, that I don't want something that has too much flavour at the moment. And that I'm not saying this doesn't have flavour, it's just a little bit more gentle, which you would expect from something that sits at 46. And it's interesting how different they are. Yeah, sweet barley field with a yellow-green influence. They do have a youthfulness to them, but I think it's more that they have a touch of youthfulness that feels refreshing, as in the flavour's refreshing, instead of it being... I don't really feel like, oh, I can't wait to see what they're going to be in a few years' time, even though I will be very excited to follow them in their journey. I think they sit quite nicely here, but yeah, the difference is that if you're looking for something quite robust and quite like a Scandinavian forest, then the Ainnir is probably more for you. But if you want like a sweet barley field, then the batch one, I would say, is a lot more that direction. And of course, it will be very interesting to see what they're going to do in the future with the future batches, how much they're going to differ from each other. I know they're taking orders at the moment, which will be shipped in November, I think. And of course, you can't get a hold of the Ainnir anymore, but the batch one is sold for just under £50, I think. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you tried the batch one or the Ainnir? I know I've already gotten messages from a lot of you that have ordered their bottle. Maybe you're saving it and gonna have it with a friend, which I think is lovely. And yeah, I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with anything that I've said? Do you disagree? How did your experience kind of portray itself when you try them? Please put your comments in the section here below. And of course, if you like what I'm doing here on YouTube, I would of course be absolutely over the moon if you consider using my affiliate links with either Master Malt, the Whisky Exchange, or the Scotch Malt Whisky Society the next time you're shopping with them. And if you're curious about my other channels, my website, my Instagram, my Teespring shop and my Patreon, that information is here below as well. And as always, a massive thank you to my wonderful supporters on Patreon. You guys are amazing and I'm so grateful you want to continue to support me on my whisky journey. But I hope you've all had an absolutely wonderful day. Sláinte Skål. Hi guys, you're getting a little bit of an extra today. Look what just happened. First world problems, but at least I'm trained in these kind of situations. I have a plastic bag trick where you can get the cork out of the bottle. That is still just a little bit sad, isn't it? But yeah, I hope you liked the review anyways.